On behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I'm Myron Brilliant, the Executive Vice President and Head of International Affairs at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I'm delighted to be able to address the third Indo-Pacific Business Forum. I'm also pleased that Charles Friedman, the Senior Vice President for Asia, John Goyer, the head of our Southeast Asia program, and of course, Nisha Biswal, the Senior Vice President for South Asia, will be also addressing this forum as well. We're honored to host the first forum at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington in 2018, in which Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Ross, and former Secretary Perry spoke. We followed up the 2018 forum by supporting the event when it was held in Bangkok late last year under very different circumstances, which was extremely successful with more than 1,000 people attending. This kind of gathering is obviously hard to imagine these days, and we all look forward to the time when we can be back in person together, because the connectivity is what we all strive for, and we will get back to that post-pandemic. But I'm very pleased that both Secretaries Pompeo and Secretary Ross are addressing the forum again this year, and that Secretary Boulette is also joining. We're all doing this, as we said, largely virtually. We've held this forum in Asia, in the United States, and now uniquely virtually. It may be a challenge to figure out what we do for an encore, but I'm sure we're up for the challenge. I want to thank our host, the government of Vietnam, and in particular, Prime Minister Phuc, whom I finally recall hosting in Washington during his visit in 2017. Thank you for being such a gracious host. In addition, I want to thank our friend, Ambassador Ngoc, who ably represents Vietnam in Washington and who works tirelessly as an advocate for the U.S.-Vietnam commercial relationship. On the U.S. side, I want to thank Secretary Pompeo for his leadership in the United States government Indo-Pacific strategy. As an aside, I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Secretary Pompeo at a recent forum here in Washington, D.C. And again, he underscored his commitment to encourage and support U.S. engagement across East Asia. Ambassador Crittenberg, thank you. You've been a great friend and supporter of the business community. I want to thank you in particular for your support of the U.S.-Vietnam Investment Summit a couple of weeks ago, and the work you do in Vietnam on behalf of the relationship is equally compelling. This forum obviously comes at a challenging time in the United States. With elections just a few days away, attention is focused inward. However, regardless of the outcome, the U.S. Chamber will continue to be an advocate for pro-business policies to support economic growth and prosperity. And regardless of the outcome, the Indo-Pacific region will remain vitally important to the United States economy. The region must therefore remain uppermost in American economic policy priorities. And I'm confident that no matter who wins the election, that the U.S. government will focus its attention on strengthening and deepening ties to the Indo-Pacific region. I'd like to make three main points today. First, we support the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy in a number of ways. We think it's a great framework for addressing and managing challenges in the region. Importantly, it recognizes the increasingly large role that India, Bangladesh, and the subcontinent plays in our economic relationship with Asia. However, the economic dimension of this initiative should be commensurate with the security side of it. We need a broader economic strategy towards the region. A broader strategy includes greater market access through bilateral free trade agreements, such as those that were started with Japan and are being negotiated with other countries in other regions like the UK and Kenya. It should include functional agreements in narrow areas such as digital trade, as well as under consideration with partners like Australia. Moreover, we previously supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership in the context of FOIP. It is well past that time that we seriously consider ways in which to engage in a successor agreement, the CPTPP, or some other new evolution of it. Such a broader approach should embrace the highest standards and rules, including some of the understandings that were reached through the USMCA early in the year. Some of the USMCA agreement is a good model. Not all, but some is a good model for the kind of approach we want to take in the Indo-Pacific region. Asia is actively pursuing FTAs, for example, even during the pandemic. The RCEP countries have continued negotiations and are working to finalize that agreement this year. Vietnam recently signed an agreement with the European Union, and Japan has several bilateral deals in the region. The list goes on. Not all these agreements, however, raise the high standard, the high bar that we think is important for facilitating trade and investment. And these agreements, of course, do not have the presence of the United States. The United States is not a party to many of the negotiations going on right now in the region, and therefore it puts U.S. companies at a competitive disadvantage. We need to be in the game. The fact is, when we stand on trade and when we engage, we help elevate the populations in these countries. We bring new opportunities. We bring the best of our management, and we bring the best of our technology and know-how. When we don't get engaged, the United States falls behind, but these countries don't benefit from America's lack of engagement. A broader strategy is much needed to counterweight to the competitive challenges in the region. We applaud programs like Asia Edge, the Infrastructure Transaction and Assistance Network, and the Digital Connectivity and Cybersecurity Partnership, and others that help create healthy, enabling conditions and industry engagement to promote best practices and regulatory environments. These address important areas, but in the context of a broader strategy, they should be accompanied by meaningful market access and high standard rules of the road. That's where the U.S. Chamber comes in, and that's where the U.S. Chamber wants to work with other like-minded institutions in promoting meaningful market access and high standards. But we can't do that alone. We need the help of the American Chamber community, and we, of course, need to work very closely with the U.S. government and the governments in the Indo-Pacific region. U.S. engagement is critical. It's vital. This is my second point. Turmoil from the pandemic, the geostrategic issues, and political uncertainties have created a complicated environment. The United States, in coordination with allies and strategic partners, including Vietnam, the Quad countries, and others, should vigorously engage and play a leadership role. The Indo-Pacific strategy can provide a useful framework within which to exercise leadership, but this strategy cannot succeed absent strong partnerships across the region. In this context, we welcome China's economic rise, but there are tremendous challenges associated with China's rise. And here we have been doing for some time, I would simply reemphasize the need to encourage transparency, encourage the best, highest standards for market access, and a commitment to international rules. Disruptive and distorting trade policies must be avoided. Industrial policies that favor national champions undermine market confidence. And in this regard, we want a constructive and pragmatic relationship with China. But China also has to come to the table and make its own commitments in this area felt and realized and tangible. Third, following the last point, we need to double down on rebuilding commerce and ensuring the supply chains are not distorted and are not disrupted. We need to work through this pandemic and get to the other side. We have struggled with COVID. Countries have looked inward. Nationalist rhetoric has already illustrated how the distribution of any eventual vaccine will pose tremendous challenges. We support our own interests by supporting the international community, including by working through regional and multilateral alliances. If we want to grow, and we do want to grow, we need to work together on trade, supply chain issues, and in many other areas. We can promote greater energy cooperation, sustainability, development and market reforms, access and security through Asia Edge. Looking at the tremendous infrastructure needs and opportunities in the region, programs like the Infrastructure Transaction and Assistance Network have huge potential to address the region's massive infrastructure needs. And I'm really pleased to see in the U.S. government enhanced efforts through the Development Finance Corporation and other tools that we now have available that will help the public-private partnership in encouraging more investment in infrastructure across the region. We can set the rules for the road for the digital economy through vehicles such as digital connectivity and cybersecurity partnership. The International Development Finance Corporation, as I said, and the Exim Bank, USCC, and other agencies must play a critical role in all these areas. There's been far too much uncertainty in the international trade arena. We need to start creating certainty in order to build confidence, without which investment does not occur. The pandemic will end. It will end. It will end. Let me stress that. And the world will have to adjust in many ways. It already is adjusting. Workforce will never be the same post-pandemic. Digital issues will creep into our work in a way that we could not have fathomed a year ago. This change will bring opportunities. It can bring prosperity. But change is not easy for everyone, and we don't want anyone left behind. For that to happen, the United States and the Indo-Pacific region must work closer and closer together. This is a dynamic region of the world. U.S. leadership is critical to ensuring that the Indo-Pacific thrives and grows and remains dynamic in nature. And the Indo-Pacific needs the United States. It needs the private sector in the United States to make investments, to believe and have confidence in the developments of the economies in the Indo-Pacific. We recognize that the United States is not alone in taking a hit. Our economy certainly has been hit. Our people have felt the brunt of the pandemic. But we know that the pandemic is not just a U.S. issue. It's a global issue. And with that, we will recover. And in fact, as we see such collective efforts in the United States and around the world, we are reassured about the commitment we all are making to ensure that trade goes forward, that our people will recover, that the health of our economy and the health of our people is first and foremost in our minds. But we cannot retreat. We cannot retreat. We need to embrace openness. We need to embrace the need for supply chains to work. We need to embrace the opportunities that exist before us. Together, we can work effectively to knock down barriers, to promote opportunities, and to expand commerce and cooperation between the people of the Indo-Pacific and the United States. For decades, the United States leadership in the region has been based on economic openness. We commit to doing that in the United States. We commit to openness. We will strengthen our existing partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region by lowering, not raising barriers to trade. We will, at the U.S. Chamber, continue to be an advocate for this. When we run into barriers in other countries, we must overcome them through fair, tough, and enforceable trade rules. We do believe that's important. But this is not the future. The future is finding paths for cooperation in new areas of energy development, new areas of technology development, new areas that will create opportunities in the agriculture and manufacturing space, new areas that will advance commerce, tourism, transportation, and many other areas, including infrastructure. The fact is that U.S. leadership, can be and should be vigorous and sustained when it comes to the Indo-Pacific region, is critical to rebuilding prosperity. Working with our allies, we can address supply chain disruptions, create certainty, facilitate investment, level the playing field, and rebuild the environment for longer-term economic growth. We commit to you at the U.S. Chamber to work with all of you on these endeavors. Thank you very much.